next part of Jane's stories here. Jane should take a walk before dinner. It sounds lovely, but I'm afraid I'm feeling rather dizzy after the journey and would prefer to walk to clear my head. Could you please ask Mr. Stevens to wait for me? Very well. Mistress Vye gave a short nod and left Jane to unpack her few belongings. Jane heard an approaching chatter of women's voices outside her room. He opened her door to see what the commotion was and nearly collided into a girl with black hair and vibrant green eyes. Oh, I beg your pardon. We were just going down to have tea. I must confess that we were rather hungry and in a bit of a rush. Two other girls were behind the green-eyed young lady, a bashful-looking girl with curly brown hair and a very refined-looking young lady with handsomely styled red hair. Evie, we should introduce ourselves, said the one with the tight tan hair. Oh, indeed, how rude of me. I am Miss Evie Wood, and this is Miss Effie Baxter, she said, gesturing to the girl with the curly brown hair. And this is Miss Pearl Price. Jane offered each of them a smile. I am so pleased to meet your acquaintance. My name is Jane Moore. I have come to London on business with my solicitor. Oh, how thrilling! Exclaimed Miss Wood. Tell us, where do you come from? How long have you been in London? How long do you intend to stay? The excited stream of her questions was quelled by a polite cough from Miss Price. Miss Wood remembered her manners. Oh, well, we really must have a long chat, Miss Moore. I am sure we would all become the greatest of friends. Will you be joining us for tea? Not today. I'm a bit unwell from the long trip, and I'm hoping my solicitor will accompany me on a brief walk to clear my head. Oh, of course. Well, we shall be off then. I am so pleased that you have come. Miss Wood said hurriedly, as Miss Price attempted to usher her away. Jane returned the sentiment and secured her bonnet before heading back downstairs. If Mr. Stevens was annoyed at being summoned as a walking partner, he hid it well. I am at your service, Miss Moore. What direction shall we take? He offered her his arm. They walked silently for a while, and Jane felt increasingly better. She had missed her usual exercise. Mr. Stevens glanced at her a few times as if trying to sense whether she felt recovered. Any better, Miss Moore? He asked. Yes, thank you. I think you must favor your mother, Miss Moore. I don't see much resemblance to the Moores in your countenance. Jane looked at him in surprise. You knew my family? As she asked the question, Mr. Stevens paled. He laughed weakly. Well, naturally, yes, only your father. Really, I was in the firm Jarndyce and Jarndyce, you know. I saw your father several times. His voice had risen in pitch, and she wondered if he was nervous. He sounded nervous, but why should he? He went on. It is strange that your parents did not discuss their legal intentions with you, Miss Moore. It was just their way. They doted on me ever since I was a child, I believe, and they never stopped thinking of me as a child. She sniffed a bit in fond remembrance. Mr. Stevens' lips twitched, and she wondered if he smelled something foul that she had missed. The air was by no means fresh, but she was getting used to it. Naturally, they would dote on their only child, he said rather sardonically. She glanced up at him for a moment. His face went from looking disgusted to being strangely puzzled. She followed his gaze to a peculiar man with a monocle and light, slick-back hair. He was staring at her, which was very odd, as she had never seen him before in her life. Could she be imagining it, or was there a malicious gleam in his eye? The man began to approach them, but was delayed by a small band of children who were whooping loudly and running underfoot. Jane glanced at Mr. Stevens, who looked alarmed. I don't like the look of that fellow, Miss Moore. Let us hurry back to the boarding house. Are you quite well enough to be very hasty? Jane showed her answer by turning sharply and nearly dislocating Mr. Stevens' arm as she dragged him back off the way they had come. Jane was relieved when they made it back to the safety of Mistress Vye's boarding house. Mr. Stevens bid her adieu, and she made her way up to her room to change for dinner. After a very hearty meal, Jane felt more exhausted than she had ever been. What a very unusual day! She tried not to dwell on the ominous, monocled stranger from her walk earlier. All she wanted was to fall into deep sleep. However, she was surprised to find on entering her room that a letter was waiting on her dressing table, sealed with reddish wax. She glanced back at the door, wondering by whom it had been left. She broke the seal and read in an unfamiliar hand, Miss Moore, you cannot trust Gabriel Stevens. I will be waiting to meet you at the Crystal Palace by the cat show just as the clock strikes noon for the next 3 days. All will be explained. Yours, a friend." Jane was still staring at her letter in astonishment when she heard a knocking on the door. She looked up to see Mistress Vye peering in. "Good evening, Miss Moore. I hope you found your walk refreshing. I was just looking in to ask if you would like to join the other young ladies and myself on a visit to an orphanage tomorrow morning. We are going at noon." Oh dear. Jane seems to be getting herself in a little bit of trouble, but is she? You will be the one to decide. Should Jane go to the Crystal Palace, or should she go with Mistress Vye and the others to the orphanage? Choose wisely for dear Jane's sake.